Yeah, I just wanna be the greatest.
It's your boy Hi-Fi Vega back again, and this time I'm back with an amp dyno. I'm gonna test this massive, I've got it right here, NVX NBA 401 in-series 4-channel Class AB amplifier. This thing is a bit of a throwback to the old school, and it is huge. It makes around 135 watts at 4 ohms and more at 2 ohms. I will obviously put those up when we get to the dyno portion. We'll listen to it, see what I think. But this is a new amp with kind of an old school flair. I think it's gonna be a fun one. And full disclosure, this was sent to me by NVX to check out and see what I think. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the testing, and we'll see what kind of power it makes, and we'll see what I think about the amp overall. When I'm checking out a new product, I always like to check out the box and kind of read the specs, because often it has all the information you need. And you can see here it is rated 135 watts by 4 and 200 by 4 at 2 ohms stereo and 400 bridged. And you can see that this is a Class AB amp. You can see the fuse rating, the frequency response, the high pass, low pass filter stuff, and the dimensions, which is very important on this amp. All right, let's take a look at some of the features that this amp has, starting with the 2-channel and 4-channel input. You can switch in between. So if you need a fade, definitely use the 4-channel input, but if you do not, you can just use one set of RCAs to power all 4 channels. Then of course you have both line ins. You have a level control for the front and the rear. Here and here you have a high pass crossover for both. You have a low pass crossover for both. You have full range on the crossover on both of them, a high pass filter on both, and a low pass filter on the end, which can also be used as a band pass filter using both of these levels. You have a clone rear, which I'm assuming, I did not read the manual, you should always read the manual. That just makes everything in the front clone the rear, but I'll have to look that up to be sure. And you get a bass boost in case you're running this on a set of components, and then in the rear maybe a sub. Let's take a look at the power input and the power output. For the input portion, you have 2 4-gauge terminals and a small remote, which I'm assuming is 12 gauge. The 4-gauge inputs are also straight, super solid bonus for that, with the angled terminals so that you can adjust these without actually hitting that end cap right there. So that's a nice feature. You have 105 amps worth of fusing. That is a lot of fuse for a 4-channel amp. So I'm assuming that this is gonna be a pretty beefy boy. And then of course you have all your speaker outputs. It's labeled clearly. You can see easily the bridge marks, the positive, negative, left and right. Let's run this amp dyno 8 ohm mono test. This is going to simulate 4 ohm stereo. We're looking for 270 watts. We got 243 watts at 14.28 volts, pulled 60.7 amps, making this amp 56% efficient. And you got to remember, it is a Class AB amp, so that is right on par with what we expect. And it fell only a little bit short of the actual power rating, mainly because we only got 14.28 volts instead of the 14.4 volts in which it is rated. Now we're on to the 4 ohm mono test using the same 1 kilohertz track. We are rated 400 watts by 2. Let's see what kind of power we get. Looks like we got 395 watts at 14 volts, pulled 107 amps, making this 52% efficient, which, remember, being Class AB is not too bad. Let's run that 4 ohm mono test again, this time with a 40 hertz track so we can see how much power you would be getting to a subwoofer. We get 403 watts at 14.05 volts, pulled 110 amps, making this amp 52% efficient, the same at 1 kilohertz as it is at 40 hertz. All right, let me quickly go over the setup we got. I have the 2 Sonys hooked up, 8 ohms on the front channels, the Savard 6.5 bridge to the rear. So we've got it basically in tri mode. We're gonna see what this can do with pretty much a full system. We're not gonna get too loud, but I'm gonna give you enough to let you listen to it and see what you think about it, and I'll kind of tell you what I think about it being a Class AB. Is it much better than some of the Class D? Is it, you know, pretty much the same? We're fixing to find out. And one thing I get a comment on quite a lot is about having these Sonys out over the edge of this. And as always, I always have these Sonys hanging out over the edge when you're listening to them. So for those of you that commented that they are over the edge, I wanted to show you. So I think we'll go ahead and get into a few of the sound demos. I'll set up the tripod so you can check it out. Maybe throw up some B-roll, give you something to look at. Okay, we're back with my final thoughts. You've seen the amp dyno, you got to listen to it for yourself. What did you think? I think that it done what it was rated. It came up just a little bit short on the 4-ohm test, but we weren't at the full 14.4 volts, so I will give it a pass on that. And as far as sound, I think the amp sounds really good out of the box. It's not gonna absolutely blow you away like it's a Moscone amp, but for $200, and sometimes you can catch this on sale for $179, I think it's a really, really solid buy. And if you bought this amp, you definitely would not be disappointed in it. So that's it. That's my review. I think it's a good amp at a good price, and you definitely be doing yourself a favor if you're already looking at this amp by go ahead and picking it up. And if you want to do that, I will leave a link in the description below, an affiliate link. So yeah, check this amp out and let me know what you think. I want to give a shout out to all my Patreon supporters, but a special shout out goes to the $6 or more members: 2001 Monolithic, G Nalva, Joaquin Juarez, El Fuego, Travis McClendon, Brandon Hanna, William Berg, Boxboy Audio Sound Solutions, Jesus Tires, Dennis Cromwell Jr., Scott Dilbeck, D. Stewart, Aaron Waltz, David Kozlik, Scott McCord, Matthew Tolberg, DBO Bass, and Corey D. For as little as $2 a month, you can join the team and help me reach my first goal of $200 a month so I can do a Patreon exclusive monthly podcast. If any of this sounds interesting to you, check me out at patreon.com/hi-fi-vega. Solid. While I've got everything hooked up, I kind of want to give you guys an idea of what a setup like this draws amperage wise. It's really not much, running, just one sub at 400 watts, 4 ohms, and then running two 8 ohm speakers. So this is going to be a little bit of a lighter load than you'd be running in a car. You'd obviously be running 4 ohms to the two front speakers, but let me crank it up a little bit. We'll see what kind of amperage this is drawing at full tilt. I'll show you the idle amperage now at a pretty low volume, and it's basically the same amount of draw it had just sitting idle on an amp dyno. So let's turn it up a little bit. Let's see. That should kind of give you an idea of how difficult an amp dyno run is actually on an amplifier. Let's go ahead and turn it up a little more. Let's go, full tilt boogie, as my buddy Kip would say, and let's see what kind of amperage we draw that way. right, that may be something you haven't really seen much of. I wanted to show you while I had it all hooked up. I figured it would be kind of interesting to watch.